Good morning, Higher Hope. This is Wednesday, April 8th. Again, another check-in on this Holy Week, Wednesday of Holy Week, halfway through, but really it's not really even halfway through. It's a build-up to this life-altering, world-changing moment for all of history. This coming weekend is what the Old Testament has been predicting and saying was going to happen, and that the Messiah was going to come, and that the Messiah was going to make everything right. And then it happens. In the Old Testament or the New Testament's looking back, saying, "Wow, look what happened. Look what happened when Jesus died on the cross and He rose again. How that impacts us." And I wanted, in the middle of this week, I wanted to just talk about this idea of worship. We all think worship is singing a song or maybe even a prayer, but worship is showing somebody their worth. And one of the stories in Scripture, one of the amazing pieces, is the story of the woman with the alabaster jar. And there's different versions of the story in Scripture, each with different details. It's in all four Gospels. But the story says that there was a woman, and one version says, who had lived a sinful life, who was broken and maybe had reasons for living that sinful life, and just all of society, all of her community looked at her, and she was an outsider. She was one of those people that you just look at and say, "Man, they're messed up. They're broken. They don't get it." And she comes in contact with Jesus, and she is wowed by Jesus, and she knows that He has the power to forgive sins, and she comes in, and this meal in front of a bunch of people are eating there, and Jesus is there, and she comes in with an alabaster jar of perfume, and it's a very expensive jar. It's probably tied into her wedding. So most brides would have a dowry that they would give to their husbands, of value, something of value that would be what they would bring into the marriage. And bringing this alabaster jar of perfume in to this meal where she's really not invited. And in the middle of the meal, she breaks the perfume and pours it all out on Jesus, with tears, and just with her cleaning His feet with her hair. She is in this act of worship. This very like, Jesus, you are worth all of this. You're worth my future plans of a husband. You're worth my most valuable possessions. You're worth people looking at me and thinking I'm insane. You're worth it all. I I adore you. I'm amazed by you. And I wonder, for me and maybe for us, if our worship as a whole, as we do it today in our modern culture and our way of music, and that if we're missing something, if our worship is not adoring Him like that woman did. Jesus loved it. He honored her. He actually says, you will be remembered for this because of this act of worship. So I wonder how you're worshiping today. I wonder if we settle. If Jesus is as great as we think, as we say He is, if He is as powerful, and if we have life because of Him, what do we bring to Him? And so what happens is all the people around the table are like, "Jesus, why'd she do that? That was expensive. You could have sold it and given it to the poor. You could have done this with that. You could have done with that with that." And he looks at them and says, "Do you see this woman?" Now stop for a second. This is the second part. This is how you can read Scripture and see multiple things in the same passage. And he said, we focused on her worship. And now he's like, the people around the table, do you see, you saw her sinfulness. You labeled her. All right. She's dealing with that. You saw her act of pouring out her perfume. You saw the perfume. But he says, do you see her? And that's an important detail of the story of how Jesus sees. Jesus sees who we are. He takes labels off of us. The reason we worship is because he sees us. He sees us, sees our hearts and all the brokenness in it. He sees our struggles. He sees our times of rebellion, and yet he still loves us. He still wants to. The word is forgive us, and what he ends up saying to the people is, "Do you see her? Her many sins are forgiven." So yeah, this is her response. Her response of worship and be like, "Wow." Her wowness of Jesus is like, wow, I've been forgiven much. My life has been transformed. I was broken and now I'm like whole again because of Jesus. And I want to worship him like that. Do you see? Jesus sees. And sometimes as we're walking through our world, here's the second part of the story is, do we see people? And I'm not talking about do we see them as they're walking. I mean, do we see past the facade they're putting on? Do we label people, or do we try to prayerfully say, Jesus, help me to see as you see? Again, this is a powerful story. There's so much more there that I could share with you, but I wonder how you're worshiping today and how you're seeing people, and how tied together they really are. When we see people rightly, it will lead us. We're becoming more like Jesus, and so obviously that's an act of worship. So today, I just want you to think as you head into this Holy Week, how do you want to worship Jesus with all that you have? Not just in a song or coming on a Sunday morning, but with everything you got.